We live in an exciting time, with new and improved life-saving medications being developed and approved every year. In 2023, the Food and Drug Administration approved 55 new drugs, as well as a number of cell and gene therapies, vaccines, and blood products. Many of these new treatments were in the area of cancer, brain diseases, infectious diseases, and blood diseases. There are already a number of exciting drugs in the pipeline expected to be considered for approval in 2024. However, these new medications come at a high price. Americans pay 2 to 3 times more for prescription drugs than citizens in other countries. Prescription drug spending per capita, basically per person in the United States, is more than double the average in the Organization for Economic Cooperation in Development Countries. This caused 9 million, or roughly 8.2% of Americans, in 2021 to try to reduce costs by skipping doses, taking lower doses, or not filling prescriptions in order to save costs. Patients not taking their medications as prescribed puts their health at risk since they are not receiving the full benefit of their medications. To address what is described as prescription drug price gouging, the Biden administration announced in December of 2023 that the government has the authority to license drug patents to another company to produce the medications at a lower price. This would only apply to drugs with high prices that were developed with the support of the government funding. In this video, we will examine how are new drugs developed and approved, how is biological and biomedical research funded, and why are prescription drug prices so high. Stick around to the end of this video when we consider the question, should the government seize patents to keep drug prices down? Drug development is a process that can take 10 to 15 years of rigorous testing to determine if a medication is safe and effective for treatment of a condition. This process eliminates the majority of interesting chemicals in order to find those rare substances that will have a beneficial effect. According to the Congressional Budget Office, with the costs associated with drugs that fail to reach the market, a new drug could cost between $1 to $2 billion to develop. Prior to testing a potential new drug on human patients, the drug must first undergo extensive research to find substances that interact with targets identified as associated with a condition. For those substances that appear promising, additional testing is conducted to learn what the drug does in the body and what the body does with the drug. This is often done through testing on animals that have similar biological characteristics to humans, as well as some studies that are done on cells grown outside of the body in a laboratory setting. Once this preliminary research has identified an interesting drug candidate, the Food and Drug Administration will review all of the data from the discovery and preclinical research and, if appropriate, approve the drug for testing in humans through clinical trials. In Phase 1 clinical trials, a few healthy individuals receive the medication and they are evaluated to determine the safety of the drug. Once the drug has been shown to be safe in healthy individuals, the drug is then tested in patients with the condition to determine if the medication is effective at treating the condition and to determining effective doses in Phase 2 clinical trials. Finally, in Phase 3 clinical trials, the medication is tested extensively in a larger, diverse population to confirm that it is better than existing medications and to look for rare safety concerns such as adverse reactions that may not show up in studies with only a few individuals. After the Phase 3 clinical trials are completed, the Food and Drug Administration will review all of the data to determine if the medication should be approved as a safe and effective treatment for that condition. However, research on the drug continues beyond the point of approval in Phase 4 clinical trials that involve post-marketing surveillance to again continue to look for rare side effects. A patent provides the inventor of a new product or process, or in this case a new drug, to receive exclusive property rights for a limited period of time. The patent provides the inventor with a monopoly for 20 years from the filing of the patent application. However, with the extended period of time that is needed for FDA approval prior to marketing the drug, the manufacturer's monopoly is shorter, although the FDA may provide for a window of exclusivity where only the developer can produce and sell the medication. Once the patent expires, competitors can begin making and distributing generic medications without the extensive research and development costs. They only have to show that their generic medication is biologically equivalent, which means, in other words, has the same effect as the brand name drug. A Congressional Budget Office report from 2021 shows that the pharmaceutical industry spent $83 billion in research and development in 2019, which is roughly 10 times what they were spending in 1980. While other research-intensive industries such as software and semiconductors average about 15% of net revenues on research and development, the pharmaceutical industry is now approaching 25% of their revenues reinvested into research and development. The same Congressional Budget Office report from 2021 shows that federal government is the primary funder of basic research in the biomedical sciences. The basic science is viewed as a public good that provides the information to the entire scientific community rather than secreting it away within a single company. In addition, a 2023 study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association showed that 386 out of the 387 drugs approved by the FDA from 2010 to 2019 were supported by almost $250 billion of federal funds administered through the National Institutes of Health. This works out to be roughly an average of $33.8 million per drug approved. In this environment, the NIH funding focuses on basic science research that leads to the discovery of new drugs, and then private funding from these companies is used in developing these interesting discoveries into commercial applications. Once a drug is approved by the FDA to go to market or be sold to patients, the manufacturer sets a list price. This list price is similar to the sticker price of a car, so it may be changed along the way. The company will offer incentives or discounts so that their drug is provided within an insurance plan's formulary. The formulary is a list of drugs that the insurance company will cover for their patients. Complicating this issue is that the insurance companies will then contract with a prescription benefit manager, this PBM, to administer their prescription benefits. The prescription benefit manager then negotiates with the manufacturer and the pharmacy to provide the medications that the patient receives. Along each step of the process is the need for the entity to generate a profit, resulting in a higher price for the patient. Whether a drug is a brand name drug protected by the monopoly of the patent for a period of time after it's approved by the FDA, or a generic drug, which is produced by a company that didn't develop it, but is biologically similar to it and has a similar effect, will determine where the money spent on prescription drugs goes. For a brand name drug, the majority of money from a prescription is going to go to the manufacturer, where for a generic, the majority of the money is going to go to the pharmacy that dispenses the drug. Along the way, all of the other entities involved with the production and delivery of this medication to the patients are involved and get a portion of the revenue generated from the sale of that prescription. In a 2020 study by the West Health Policy Center and the Council for Informed Drug Spending Analysis, they looked at Medicare patients that are unable to afford their medications, and they project that over the next decade, this could result in 1 million deaths and $177 billion in excess healthcare costs to cover their worsening health conditions. The same study showed that reducing the healthcare costs, reducing the drug costs, could result in 94,000 fewer deaths and roughly $475 billion in Medicare savings. In an effort to address these high prescription drug costs and the problem caused by patients not taking their medications as prescribed, contributing to worsening health, as part of the Inflation Reduction Act signed into law in 2022, Medicare is now able to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. This is expected to result in savings of $160 billion over the next decade. However, this cost savings attempt is not without controversy. There are claims that this effort will reduce costs, will discourage research and development on new drugs, or potentially investigations into new uses of existing medications. In addition to the ability to negotiate lower drug prices as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden administration is looking at licensing patents of new drugs to other manufacturers to reduce the cost. This would basically shorten that exclusivity period that the patent protection provides in order to deliver generic medications to the market sooner. Now, the Bayh-Dole Act, more formally known as the Patent and Trademark Law Amendments Act of 1980, promoted innovation by allowing universities and small businesses that receive federal funding to monopolize their novel inventions. Part of this act allows for the government funding agency to grant licenses to other companies to market their products. These government rights, though, have not been exercised up until this point, so not in the 44 years that this law has been in effect. The proposal to license patents to other manufacturers during that exclusive period of the patent protection is not without controversy. Looking at opinion pages across a variety of news sites, you can find articles talking about the fact that this plan basically comes down to the equivalent of intellectual property theft. The pharmaceutical industry is raising concerns that eroding the patent protections will limit research and development of new drugs and effectively stifle innovation going forward. And there are some that argue that this continued effort to reduce prescription drug pricing could hurt the health of Americans in the long term because it would limit the innovation and development of new drugs going forward. So with this background information, we're now ready to consider the ethical dilemma in science this week. Should the government seize patents to keep drug prices down? In order to consider this question, we need to look at a couple various topics within this. Does society have an obligation to intervene so patients can afford vital medications, or is drug access an individual responsibility? How do you balance the need for a company to generate a profit with a patient's need to access the treatment? And then finally, what is a fair balance between privatized profits, government interests, and public health needs? Thank you for engaging in this important conversation about balancing the need to promote pharmaceutical innovation while providing patients with access to life-saving medications. In the description below is additional information, references, and a link to a lesson plan to accompany this video. Please comment with your thoughts on this topic or suggestions for future topics. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe for more conversations on the ethical impact of science and technology on society. Until next time, stay curious and be informed.